A class that speaks to me constantly in fantasy is the Ranger. This is partly due to Aragorn, and even in the old cartoon that came out when I was in my teens, he still kicked ass. But part of the class was also the wandering and exploring aspect. In sci-fi, I love scouts and explorers, to find the uncharted. It's one thing that appeals to me greatly about Star Trek. Typically it hasn't been something that can happen in Star Wars very well, until now. In a rebellion against the Empire setting, explorers have a place, but it's more focused and minimalized, more centered on finding base locations. Now that can make excellent stories, and it can be really important to the rebels, so it isn't something to take as trivial. But Edge of the Empire, while it can have Imperial entanglements, is a whole different beast, and it allows for a completely different style of game. It can allow for entire non-combat based games in the traditional sense. Games can be centered around exploration of new hyperspace routes, or looking for new habitable or mineral-rich planets. These types of games can be filled with wonder as well as adventure. Scout ships tend to be small and isolated. There isn't any repair facilities on the uncharted worlds, and the planets themselves can be dangerous. A group may not want to do these kinds of games all the time, but they can be a nice change of pace. A well-made hardcover of 94 pages, listed as 96 but 2 pages are ads. It begins with a discussion around the exploration in Star Wars, which ends up being a lot more important than possibly first thought. The Empire needs resources and room to expand. The Rebels need bases and resources, trading mineral deposit locations for a cut or other needed items. Smugglers need bases. The search for hyperspace routes and trade, the quest for ancient cultures and tombs for research or plunder. As always, the background section is really useful. It gives an overview of a concept and then how the classes might fit within it. These include academic, business, ex-imperials, and wanderers. For each they give an idea how fringes, scouts, traders, archaeologists, big game hunters, and drivers could fit within that idea. We have new obligations which can be used at the beginning of character creation or added later through story. As with all these books, there are 3 new species, the Shis, Duros, and Toydarian. I am a fan of the Duros and made a fighter pilot of one. The Toydarians seem far more like we saw in Phantom Menace rather than the Clone Wars, which was a pity. Though by episode 2 even Watto seemed to be more compassionate. In Clone Wars, they were a very giving society with a desire to help those in need. That isn't really in the description here. We have new specializations. The archaeologist, big game hunter, and driver. There is a few new talents to go along with them, and another good section on motivations. The equipment section is quite large and includes new standard gear, weapons, suits, medical, survival, security, tools, droids, land speeders, starfighters, patrol ships, freighters, transports, and a capital ship. The freighters were a nice addition and give some much needed choice in this area. The section on how to include the explorer in the game is interesting and useful. Often in games, classes are looked as different based on their skills only, with little idea on how to use them story-wise. Ninjas in First Ed Oriental Adventures being dual class and having to be secret even from the rest of the party killed them as a fun class. This looks at the story as much as the skills. Who becomes explorers as in the type of person, and it can be different to why they became one. How can they be useful in a party and have some of the game centered on what they do? There is also a section on crafting scenes. This is a good general GM info and not related to explorers specifically. Humor, horror, foreshadowing, tension, making NPCs, language, descriptions, habits, and discussion. It's not a large section, but it has some good ideas. There are also a couple of adventure seeds that might jumpstart your mind when running dry of your own ideas. The art is beautiful, the content is cool, and the hardcover is nice to have. If you're into Edge of the Empire, I don't think you'll be disappointed with this book. Please tell me that was good.